Good evening, everybody. It's a lovely Friday evening we're having here. It's the end of day one's running at the 2023 F1 Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. I'm your host, Dre Harrison, and welcome to the WTF1 Wrap, powered by our friends at MoneyGram. Good to see you. And you probably don't recognize the fact we've got a special guest with us on this occasion. We're going to have a bunch of special guests and influencers, content creators, friends of the show, all will be tuning in over the coming season. Our first one, so no pressure or anything, my friend, is Jett Kraus. Hello, Jett. How are you, my friend? And say hi to the WTF1 audience.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm so excited to talk about F1, talk about racing.
Well, that's what we're here for at the end of the day. So just before we really get into the nitty-gritty of day one in Saudi Arabia, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Like, obviously, what do you specialize in? Where the good people can find you and all of that. So yeah, just tell us about yourself for a couple minutes, while you're here.
All right. Well, I go by on social media, go by Jett MDK, and I've been a fan of racing since I was like 9 years old. Been watching all types of racing now. Predominantly, I am a NASCAR fan. I have a NASCAR channel. That's what I run. But I've been in love with F1 for more than a decade now. Yeah, I create all types of content, whether it's current events, talking about what's going on in the NASCAR community, maybe talk about historical moments that happened in the past, or just give my opinion on any current topics or things that I'm interested in, certain you could say controversial topics. I like to talk about things like that. Just overall give my thoughts and opinions on anything regarding the racing world, specifically the NASCAR world.
Yeah, brilliant. Great to have some diverse content creation, of course. This is the blackest WTF1 has ever been, and I'm very proud of that fact. As to get two Jamaicans fronting the show, we love to see that more than anything else. A quick place where they can find you real quick, Jett, just to give them a quick bug at the top, and we'll mention it again at the end.
Yeah, on all social media platforms, I mainly use Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, JettMDK. No caps, no spaces, simple as that. But I will say with the Jamaican part, I know my mom is screaming right now because she never thought she would see this happen.
What can I say? We are proudly repping the flag today. We love to see that. So yeah, if you're a NASCAR fan, or again you keep tabs on F1 maybe a bit more casually, but you're into NASCAR, because I mean it's only been my second full season watching NASCAR, and I very much enjoyed it. Please give Jett a little WTF1 bump from us here. We're gonna have a great time here, and I'm glad we could get Jett on the show. So over the next half an hour or so, we're gonna talk team by team, talk about some of their practice sessions, talk a little bit about where they're at in terms of pace. We're going to also lay out some qualifying predictions as well. And yeah, hopefully you guys will enjoy the show. Now, if you're watching along with us, you could probably guess who's first, given what's on the screen right now. It's Alpine. And yeah, interesting perspective. We're going to go by FP2 times because FP2 is a bit more representative in Saudi Arabia, given it's a night race. Esteban Ocon all the way up there in fourth. For Alpine there, the nearest man behind the Holy Trinity, as we like to call it, a WTF1 of Red Bull and Fernando. More on that later. But you had Ocon up there in fourth. We had Gasly in sixth as well. It looks like Alpine might have a bit more pace than we first thought, Jett. It looks like they're a bit stronger than what they look like in Bahrain.
Yeah, well, Bahrain, specifically for Ocon, it was just a mess. I mean, the amount of penalties and just...
Free.
The man could not go a lap without getting caught up in penalties. So I think having going to Jeddah, having a fresh, clean start, I think this is a great way for Alpine to really show what they truly have. And I feel like with Ocon and Gasly, this is an underrated pairing. I think that usually when you look at certain teams, there's always that one guy that, okay, you can rely on him as being the top dog. But with Ocon and Gasly, they're kind of on par with each other. So going to a track like Jeddah, to see them very close to each other, fourth and sixth, it's going to be very interesting to see not only how they do against the competition, but also with each other. Because last time we were in Jeddah with Ocon and Alonso, that got very intense.
Very intense. Very
surprising.
They raced each other very hard in the last year. I think Ocon has this sort of reputation where he races his teammates quite hard in general.
Yeah.
And I mean, Bahrain last time out, it was a very different sort of round because Ocon, his race was ruined pretty much right from the get-go, having that early penalty and then stacking the penalties. It was an all-time F1 record tied, by the way. It was only the second time ever someone's got 3 driving penalties in the same race. Pastor Maldonado, the only other man to do that in Hungary in 2015. There's a fun fact of the day for you. But then you had Gasly, who had a dreadful qualifying session, had to start from the back, and he ended up going all the way up to 9th in the end. So I am the most curious about this team, I think, more than almost any other team in the field, because I don't think we got a true indication of where Alpine sits in a... Is it me, Jay, or is it just a very crowded midfield at the moment?
It is. Like, I think in years past, there's always like a clear like F1, F1 1.5, F1, like there's clear 1 or 2 teams that are in each section. But I think this year now, front of the pack, don't even question it, but the midfield, there's a lot of contenders that are capable of being the team after Red Bull, and maybe even after Aston Martin, now that Mercedes is now kind of included in that midfield bracket. So I think Alpine, they have shown, from what we've seen so far this weekend, they show they have pace. They show that they can go up against the midfield. Now it's just going to be, unlike last weekend, being able to put together a full weekend. You know, not having mistakes. Maybe like with Gasly, not having a dreadful qualifying result. Since Jeddah, I mean, yes, there are some passing zones, but it's still a very, very tough track to compete on. So if they can put together a full weekend with no issues as normal weekend, they can be a threat to be on top of the midfield.
Who qualifies higher, do you reckon? Ocon or Gasly?
Ah, man. Honestly, I really don't know, but I may have to give the advantage to Ocon.
Me too.
I think I got to go with Ocon.
I've got Ocon on this one as well. A little bit nervous about Gasly, given his first qualifying was a real disaster. But yeah, I'm sure he'll get it together this time round. I think that was more a blip than anything else. But I would like to think Ocon just a bit more solid, been with the team a bit longer. I think he's a safer pair of hands right now. But not taking anything away from Gasly's weekend, because that was a fantastic comeback.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely,
in Bahrain, certainly. Next team up, Alfa Romeo. Again, a hard team to sort of place at the moment. I mean, Valtteri Bottas was right down the bottom of the board in FP2. Zhou, again, only a couple of attempts faster, but it was in 16th. It's a close field in general. Only 1.4 seconds covering everybody in FP2. It's an incredibly close field at the moment. So a couple of attempts can really make all the difference at the moment. But... How do you look at Alfa Romeo so far this weekend, Jet? And who do you reckon might come out on top in that fight? Because I think Zhou is a little bit underrated in terms of overall speed.
Yeah, I mean, I think because with last year, because last year was a rookie. It's the first time just getting his feet wet. I think not many people paid attention to what he was doing. A lot of people looked more at what Bottas was going to do, going from Mercedes back to Alfa Romeo. But I'm with you on that. I think Zhou's got great underrated speed. But I think Bottas, just in terms of experience, I think is more of a complete driver than Zhou Guanyu. And so I know with FP2, Bottas is the bottom of the barrel. But I look at Valtteri as having the upper hand, at least in terms in qualifying tomorrow.
I think so too. I think Bottas is a little bit better in qualifying than Zhou is overall. I don't think the gap is as big as some people think it is on the internet.
No.
We have a group chat in the back, and a lot of people are adamant that like Bottas is just so underwhelming, and I don't quite know where it comes from sometimes. But I think Valtteri should be fine in this matchup. I've not seen enough from Zhou for me to convince me that he's going to regularly start beating Bottas soon. But we'll have to wait and see how we go more than anything else. That's the impression I get.
Yeah, I mean, so far this weekend, we saw that Zhou has been able to keep up with Valtteri. I know we're talking about F2, but F1, they were right. You know, I think a couple hundredths of a second between the two. I mean, they are about dead even on that one. But I think when you look at qualifying, when you look at what Bottas has done, again, I feel like he just has overall more natural of a faster pace than Zhou. Zhou is getting there. I feel like more seat time, more accustomed to having Valtteri as teammate, more to work around his team. You know, more he's more accustomed to that. I think Zhou will get to that level, but I think right now, I got to give the upper hand to Bottas.
I'm with you on that one as well. Next up on the board is McLaren, and it's been a
Oh boy.
it's been a newsworthy weekend so far for McLaren, mostly because it's just been like the drivers trying to like put out the flames from a PR standpoint. I know a lot of people have been asking questions about Lando's future, saying is it a crisis, and he had to quickly shut that down. It's we're not where we're at, but it's not a disaster, and you know. He had to talk down Oscar Piastri's failure as well, and saying, well, you know, it's a one in a multiple year thing. There's pressure on this McLaren team at the moment, and I don't think practice is going to do too much to alleviate that at the moment. Norris was 12th, just over a second off the top. Oscar Piastri down in 19th. Again, only 0.2 of a second between them in terms of practice, but you'd think this was going to be a lopsided battle so far. We know how good Lando Norris is in the McLaren camp, wouldn't you say, Jet? I mean, I think this one's a bit obvious, but I mean, talk me how you look at the McLaren setup at the moment.
Well, obviously, you look at Lando. Lando's going to have the upper hand, but I just look more of the team as a whole. This team has been, in my opinion, just, I don't want to say on a downright spiral. I don't want to say that, but they've just been off. Even last year, even with the whole controversy with Ricardo, even though that was more off track, just the whole team itself it doesn't feel stabilized. It just feels it's gone off the rails. Especially when you look at what we saw last weekend in Bahrain, it's more of like, okay, what's going to happen to this team next? Like, what issues are they going to have to deal with next? Instead of when you look at other teams like maybe an Aston Martin or look at Alpine, they're more stabilized. They're shown pace. There's potential there. With McLaren, I know Lando says, the rumors about, he wants to shut that down. But, I mean, he's got a lot of talent. And he ain't getting younger. It's just, I don't know. It's a bad situation overall for McLaren that I just don't see a light at the end of the tunnel right now. I just think that, Lando's going to be ahead of Oscar, but it's just going to be more of like, just carry on with the next race. Let's just get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, the talk is there's a big upgrade due in Baku. That's not till the end of April. That's April 30th. I believe that is. They've talked down this team at every opportunity, saying they didn't meet their targets. Their wind tunnel is in the works. They're saying that that might finally be done in June. I didn't realize until doing my homework about this that McLaren has to ship all of their aero parts to Cologne because they have to borrow Toyota's wind tunnel.
Wow.
They don't have one of their own. I didn't realize how logistically it's a nightmare it takes days to ship your parts across Europe like that. So McLaren is definitely on the back foot. Pace-wise, they still look like they're on the back foot. I think they're just praying that this Baku upgrade, when it lands at the end of April, gets them back to at least where they should be. I think the overall impression they're giving is that we think we can eventually make the top four, but I think it's going to be a bit of an uphill struggle before they get to that point. We're taking Norris over Piastri here, though, right? Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You and me both can't. That's a short one, but not that we're dunking on Piastri's talent. It's just we've seen how these matchups at McLaren have gone since Carlos Sainz has left that team.
Exactly,
Sainz was able to keep Norris honest, but as Norris has gotten better, I mean, when you're smacking around Daniel Ricciardo for 2 years, that's not ideal, to say the least. Fourth team on the books is Williams. Now, they've been, I think, one of the real surprise packages so far, and again, they're not looking too bad. Logan Sargent, 18th. In FP2, again in that towards the bottom cluster, but again Alex Albon not bad, 14th. I think they're the team that have moved up the most, maybe, besides maybe Aston Martin. Obviously, I think Albon said going into the weekend they feel like they're the second biggest improvers in the field right now compared to maybe themselves and Haas. I mean, first of all, I want to get your impression. I mean, as an American, like, is there any is there any buzz about Logan Sargent over there? Because I mean, this is the first time we've had a full-time American since Scott Speed, I want to say. I think even part-time.
Yeah.
I think you got to go to Alex Rossi.
Yeah, Rossi. I think in 2015 or so, around that time.
So I mean, has there been any buzz? I know F1's trying real hard to crack the US market. So I'd love to hear your perspective on Logan and the American hype train, as I like to call it. So how do you feel about it?
Well, it's kind of funny. Not only is he from America, he's from my hometown. I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think he grew up.
You're both
He was
Florida
born.
men.
Yeah, he was born in I think Fort Lauderdale. I'm born in Pompano, and that's like
Okay.
that's like I think half an hour distance. Like it is very close.
Wow.
So obviously this is very personal for me. I love to see a Florida man do well, but in terms of the hype, I'll be honest, I haven't heard much hype.
Me
Now
neither.
maybe now maybe that's because he is in a Williams. Is not a team that you're expecting to win. Maybe when we get closer to Miami, you may see some of that hype begin. But I've been real interested in seeing how Williams does as a whole. Obviously, we know their struggles in years past, but they've always been a mysterious team. It's like they're there one week, and then the next week they're not. One week again, not. Albon I feel like has always been underrated when it comes to qualifying. He's always been a guy that you just do not expect to run well. All of a sudden, he's in round 3, contending for a top 10. Logan Sargent, he's a rookie, so I can't go much off with him, but he had an excellent start to Bahrain.
Yeah.
So he's got some pace there. Obviously, I'm going to give the hand to Alex Albon, but they can be a real threat. Maybe not for the midfield, but for points. I think I'll even argue both. I think have the potential to score points this weekend. Maybe not qualifying the top 10. I think I'm going to give that to Albon, but I think Williams, will be a surprise this weekend.
Albon reckoned he would have made Q3 in Bahrain if he'd actually got a clean lap in. It was the first time they'd scored points in an opening round since 2016, I want to say it was. I think it was 2017. So Williams have clearly had a good start, a very good start. It was a little bit chaotic in Bahrain, but not too much, I think, outside of what you would expect for an F1 race. So I think there's certainly some optimism there. Chat, let us know how you feel about it as well. I know Eddie and the Irish Gamer in the chat has said, Sargent's just a gamble. I was hoping it could have been Nick de Vries instead. Well, at least Nick de Vries ended up in F1 in the end anyway, so everybody was a winner.
Yeah.
Right? For the Brits, living 30 minutes away in America basically makes you neighbours, says Ryan Savage. That's very true as well.
I'll give you a bit of for the people that are in Florida and they know this. Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, they're all under one umbrella called Broward County. So it's like we're basically all neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Small town vibe.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's talk about our friends at MoneyGram and the Haas F1 team. And Hulkenberg and Magnussen here. Hulkenberg, once again, punching up the timing sheets in FP2. 8th fastest and ahead of both factory Ferraris as well, which is interesting. K-Mag down in 15th in the end. What have you made of the Hulkenberg comeback so far, Jet?
I'll be honest. I think we said this off camera. Even though he's been out for 3 years, I was not expecting Hulkenberg to be this strong. Especially with having a teammate like Kevin Magnussen, which, we saw the controversy and the whole thing that happened last year with Schumacher and Magnussen. Magnussen came out swinging. And I feel like when Hulkenberg came in, I thought, okay, maybe Hulkenberg is he's going to be around Magnussen, but Magnussen will take the lead. But I feel like with these two, this is another underrated pairing. These two are very, very skilled, very talented drivers. And I think, again, when Hulkenberg gets more seat time, gets more adjusted to competing in F1 the next few races, Haas, they have a car. They have a car to score points, to be up there in the midfield. And they have two very talented drivers. This is another one of those teams. It's kind of like with Alpine. It's like, you can't really... I know Magnussen's got a ton of pace. I don't know. Something about with Hulkenberg. He's been that super sub for a couple of years now. He's just, even when he's been out, I think we saw it it was in
Racing
a couple
Point
of years ago. Racing Point. I think it was that Hockenheim or no? I think it was
Hockenheim,
right?
it was the Nürburgring. Same
Nürburgring,
country.
the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
It was the Nürburgring. He hasn't touched the car in about a year. Comes out, scores points.
Yeah.
Or was running strong.
From the back of the grid as well. Was very, very strong. So
he just has such natural pace that I think those two can be a fight for midfield, and I think I would argue both of them can even make to round 3 if everything goes well for them.
I think they've got a Q3 car. I agree.
Yeah.
Hulkenberg did make Q3 in Bahrain. I think even in testing, Haas looked very strong over a single lap. Not fully convinced on them in race trim just yet.
Right.
But I think over a single lap, I think they are certainly very strong. I think they've got a good possibility of getting at least one car into Q3. Certainly, I'm with you on that one. Moneygram's going to ask us. They've got to ask us for a pick, Jet. Are you sticking with the Hulkenberg wagon, or do you think K-Mag will come back strong this time around?
With Haas, it's like you flip a coin. It's either it's like it could go either way, but I'm liking what I see more from Hulkenberg. I think
Hulkenberg for you?
Yes, I gotta go with Hulkenberg. I mean, part German. I mean, I do have that connection with him, but aside from that, I gotta go. I'm going with Hulkenberg, but that's just again like a flip of a coin. Like I'm not saying that he's gonna be like much better than Magnussen. I mean, it could go either way, but I'm going with Nico.
We here at WTF1 are totally unbiased in our opinions here, but I'm with Jet on this one. I am gonna say Hulkenberg as well on this one. I agree with you in the chat. Ryan says has got exactly what they wanted: an okay midfield car in two very capable, consistent hands that allows them to compete for points most weekends. Given how the youth experiment for them of Mazepin and Schumacher didn't work out, Ryan, I completely agree with you. Yeah. I think this is what Haas probably always wanted. And look, if it gets them points and gets them up the ladder, no one's complaining at the end of the day. I miss Mick as much as the next guy, but so far it's looking promising for Haas compared to previous years. I mean, they didn't get that big result in Bahrain that Magnussen did last year, but hopefully if they just clean up some of the errors, I think they'll be fine. Personally,
I think overall, I feel like this is the most like not I don't want to say proud, but this is the most hopeful I've been of Haas since I think 2015, 2016.
Yeah, like do you root for them that hard as an American? Because I know a lot of Americans don't really, because they're British based and Italian engine and.
I'll be honest, I'm not really.
See,
I will say this: I'm more of the drivers. Like when Schumacher was there, I was more rooting for Schumacher than I was for Haas.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you look at Haas from the NASCAR side of things, I know this is F1, but from the NASCAR side of things,
Stuart Haas, of course, yes.
Yeah, they're okay.
Okay.
But it's more of like rooting for the drivers on the team.
That's entirely fair enough. Everyone's fan perspective is different, and I think a lot of people are like that as well, where it's drivers over teams. Speaking of high intense driver personalities, Mercedes.
Oh,
there is no news to talk about here at Mercedes whatsoever. Here, it's been a quiet day. Besides Lewis Hamilton splitting ways with quite possibly the most famous physiotherapist in the world. Angela Cullen is no more at the Mercedes setup. She's moving on to pastures new. Wish her the very best. But if you heard some of the radio messages during FP2, Jet, it wasn't promising in the Hamilton side of the garage, where it was like, we're learning nothing out here. And I believe he said something along the lines of, this car doesn't feel safe to drive, because they were going to take out a whole heap of front wing.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's going to be a lot like this time last year, where they might have to, sacrifice a bit of Hamilton's performance to maybe try some, some freakish setups to try and mitigate some of their problems. Is that the vibe I'm getting here?
I believe so. I think that's what we saw last year. We saw them, Lewis taking more risks with the car, taking more of like, okay, let's try some things out, or let's go the safe route and give the best to Russell. I think the same thing's going to happen this year, but when it comes to talking about, at least from what I've been watching F1, I've never heard some of the comments I've heard him say, talking about how I told the team this, they didn't listen to me, it's like I told y'all to, I mean, it's more frustrated Lewis I think I've ever seen since I've been watching F1, and it's very uncharacteristic to see. And it's completely justified.
Oh, yeah, 100%. This is a team we evaluate in the context of major championships. We all know Lewis is here for number 8. And I was going to say as well, Lewis tends to be very diplomatic when he talks about the team. He talks on the radio. He's not one of these guys that gets petulant and throws people under the bus. You could see that mask is coming down a little bit now, as it's realizing that it probably won't be happening for him this year either. Yeah. But at the same time, George Russell was 5th in FP2. Yeah. So, George Russell was competitive. And so maybe, I think George said after the session as well that he feels a little bit better about things. So I think this is one of the closest driver matchups on paper. I think last year there were only about half a tenth between them on average. This is a very close matchup. I'm curious to see where you think these two match up, Jet, because I think this one could be very, very tight.
I think it depends on Mercedes' direction. Like what we talked about earlier, like, okay, are they going to risk giving up Hamilton's, speed, giving it to Russell, putting more of an emphasis on Russell to ensure, hey, let's score points, or do they do like what they did in Brazil, have a car and let them just duel it out? I know they have, I believe they have a minor upgrade they have coming in Baku, I believe, so to try and
Imola, I believe it is on that one, but yes, quite right.
Oh, Imola, okay. So to try and help with that, but I mean, this in a weird way, the safe bet for me would be Russell. I know it sounds crazy to say, but I think that they're gonna go the route of trying out things more with Lewis, since Lewis, he's a veteran, he can handle some of the new things that Mercedes wants to do compared to Russell. So I think they're gonna play the safe route. And I think I got Russell getting ahead, but Lewis he's a 7-time world champion. You cannot count him out.
No, never. I think you mentioned earlier about how Haas might be a coin flip. This is the coin flip for me.
This is also a big coin flip.
I'm going to go Lewis on this one. I think Lewis will dig something out here when it matters most, more than anything else. But I could completely understand a George Russell pick, especially given the way the talk has been this weekend so far. Definitely. I will say
though, if Lewis does somehow pull another one, I won't be surprised by the slightest.
I don't think anybody will be. I think they're very evenly matched, and I think that's what makes it so fascinating between them. Let's get into Alfa Tauri, and I've talked about them on stream before, and I was on stream the moment that they had that big rumor that they might sell up, and I thought, and it just completely overshadowed everything that went into that weekend. And it's kind of happened this weekend again as well, because I heard the team principal's press conference. Their team boss, Franz Tost, pulled absolutely no punches whatsoever, said straight up, the Alfa Tauri AT04, quote, lacks everything you need to do a good lap time. So, nice to see they're optimistic in that camp.
Perfect.
Yeah, everything's going great. Nick de Vries was 17th, Yuki Tsunoda 13th on this one. I think this one's pretty straightforward for me. I think Yuki Tsunoda is the stronger driver at the moment. Yeah. I think Nick, as a rookie, is still getting to grips with the car. I think it will just be an improvement if they actually get Tsunoda's car started compared to last year, because he had the rarely seen DNS last year, which I thought was interesting. It still looks like they're lower midfield to me, though, Jet, which probably isn't what they were hoping for going into the season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm going with Yuki on this one, and I think they're, like you said, like a lower midfield type of team right now with the car that they have. But it's fascinating with more Alfa Tauri. One thing I'm more interested in with this dynamic with Yuki and Nick de Vries is more of who is going to step up, because for years it was always Pierre Gasly. As the second driver was Yuki or some other driver. But now Yuki has to step up. Now Yuki has to be the mature guy and take the lead, because Nick, we know he's fast. We know he can wheel a car. So now you have this very interesting dynamic of, okay, you have a guy that's always been the second driver, now elevated to be the top dog, now has to take on a more mature role. We know Yuki has always had a tendency of, I won't say acting out on the radio. So
fruity language.
Let's just say, fruity language. So not only is it going to be an interesting session to see how they can do with the car that they have. I mean, the car is basically, it's like a demon. It's like, it's more or less Yuki and Nick. They're more passengers and the car's just driving itself,
Pretty much.
It's like whatever the car does, I'll just go for the ride. But I'm more interested as the season goes on, how they progress as teammates, will Yuki, like I said, take that mature step up and be able to take the lead, take the throne, and help push AlphaTauri to a brighter direction later on in the season? Or could we see a change in the guard and see Nick step up and be the guy to...
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, mostly because I know Fran said before the season he wants points and Q3s out of Tsunoda. That was the expectation. And to be fair, if he's also saying that the car lacks everything to be good, maybe it gives Yuki a bit of a pass. But I'm with you on that on Yuki. Let's talk about Ferrari. Oh, dear.
Do we have to?
For those who are maybe a bit slow on the news, Charles Leclerc will be taking a 10-place grid penalty no matter what happens here, because he's already had to use a third set of control electronics. They burned through 2 of them in Bahrain. Allegedly, a human error in the installation is what caused the issue. So just when you thought it was safe to put some faith in Ferrari again, they find new and creative ways to let you down. It's and the FP2 pace wasn't particularly promising. Maybe they were running higher on fuel. Leclerc was 9th, Carlos Sainz 10th, both behind the Haas. We want to be optimistic here, because I would like Red Bull to get some competition, Jet, but I don't think it's coming from the Italians somehow.
I was about to say, Red Bull, I think, will have a little bit of competition, but it ain't coming from Ferrari.
Well, this weekend.
I don't. Yeah, not this weekend. Part of me, though, like when I first saw this, I mean, part of me always feels like, I mean, it's Ferrari. You have 2 very talented drivers. You have Charles Leclerc, potential world champion. I've always had this feeling that
Agreed.
maybe sandbagging for practice before they really show out in qualifying. I mean, it sounds so out there, but it's just with Ferrari, it's like every week is something. Whether on track, whether it's a 10th place grid penalty and changing components, things like that, or something off track. I think we've heard rumors again with Charles Leclerc and his future. Always stuff about him maybe going to Mercedes or leaving Ferrari. It's just every week there's always something with this team. And on top of that, I think with Ferrari they have a car that I think is capable of being competitive, but I just think. I just think that the competition is stacked up against them. I mean, because now you have Aston Martin that could potentially be the number 2 team.
Yeah, there's a very real possibility of that now.
Yeah, and Ferrari, I think also, while I think they're capable, they've also been a bit inconsistent, I think, in previous years. Part of it is self-inflicting, but they're always teetering, I feel like, being with the leaders and then being up at a top of the midfield. It's like It's like some days you're on the leaderboard, you're at the top of the board. Some days you're fighting like Alpine, or teams like that.
I hope there's some optimism here, because I think on paper Ferrari should be a bit stronger around here than in Bahrain. They've got good power. They've got
Charles had a great. I mean, Charles and Max had a tremendous battle last year.
One of the fights of the year, in my opinion, last season. I've really enjoyed that. I think Ferrari will be a bit stronger here, but Charles is going to be starting 11th at best. So he's going to have some traffic to get through. They're going to have to be leaning on Carlos Sainz. Ignoring the penalty, who do you think will qualify in top then, Jet, real quick?
For ignoring the penalty, I'm going with Charles. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. It's very hard to go against Charles. I'm not. That's not saying anything bad about Carlos Sainz. Exceptional driver, but I think if you were to put them against each other, I think you got to give the advantage to Charles.
Yep. Aston Martin next up, where everything is rosy and Fernando Alonso is giving everybody hope. I saw the chat; they were buzzing over Fernando. I've seen Goat Lonzo comments in the chat. People are excited, and I can understand the reason why. Fernando Alonso 2nd in FP2, just a couple attempts behind Max Verstappen. Lance Stroll not a million miles off, half a second back in 7th, still on the mend from his double wrist break. He had to go through in Bahrain, but again, competitive. Everything's coming up Millhouse over there, Jet. It looks like Fernando Alonso might be the man who's best poised to challenge Red Bull, which you would never have guessed 3 weeks ago.
Absolutely not. I think for me personally, I think I knew Fernando would be scary this year when he started doing TikTok. That's okay. When he did the gritty, I'm like, all right, he's doing this because he knows he's going to destroy almost everybody in the field. But no, Aston Martin, I mean, they've been on cloud 9. Even though we knew that Aston Martin had a car that could bring speed. I don't think anybody knew that they would be this fast, this quick, almost on par with Red Bull. Well, I should say almost, but within range of Red Bull. But obviously for qualifying, I'm gonna give the advantage to Alonso, but I'm in shock by how impressive Lance Stroll has been, especially with his injuries, especially when you go to a track like Jeddah. It's very technical. You're doing a lot of movement with the hands.
Oh, yeah.
You're not. I mean, yes, there is one long straightaway where your hands can rest a little bit, but for a majority of the lap, you're always doing something, and that can put a lot of strain on his injuries. So for him to come out and still be very competitive, still pull out impressive lap times, I think says a lot about the talent that Lance Stroll has. Because for some time, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, he's here because of because of Lawrence. He's here because of that. He's not really that good. But I think this year, I think it's going to change a lot of people's mind. And I think it has already that he's a real deal.
My fellow co-host Kieran is probably buzzing with a grin on his face, given he's the world's biggest Lance Stroll fan here in that statement. I agree. I think Fernando will still out-qualify Lance, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, even if Lance can back up Fernando reasonably well, that would, I think, would be enough to turn a lot of people around at him, because people have always been high on Fernando, 100% on that one. So if Fernando is spearheading this team, if Lance can follow in right behind, I think that would be more than enough to turn a few people's opinions on him. People in the chat, give me your top 5 for qualifying, because we've got one more team to talk about, and it's Red Bull. And well, you know,
I mean, what? I don't know what is there to talk about.
They're fast.
Yeah,
thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you. No, it's looking very, very rosy for Max Verstappen. Again, fastest in FP2 again, and in FP1 earlier on in the day. Couple attempts over Fernando. There's still a lot of murmurs that Red Bull are still holding back. More and more knowledge about Bahrain is dropping, that they were turning their power units down, and again, it's hard not to look at Red Bull and play like Sephiroth's theme from Final Fantasy in the background, where it's just like, it's just looking ominously fast for Red Bull at the moment.
You would think that maybe after 3-4 races we get an idea, not one. You're not after one race like, all right, yep, Red Bull, yep, they got it. Let's pack it in.
It's not a good sign when my editor-in-chief in the background literally says, quote, "Rest in peace title race" in our group chat earlier. I'm just like, we're trying not to make it obvious here. We're trying really hard to make it seem like there's maybe a chance Red Bull loses this one, but on paper it's hard not to think probable front row lockout here. We're probably giving the edge to Verstappen here, right? Is that fair to say, Jett?
Absolutely. I would love for Perez to pull something out, but I mean,
anything.
Yeah, it's just I wouldn't mind 2016 rivalry again. I wouldn't mind that, just something. But nah, you gotta. I mean, Max all the way.
Yeah,
it's very hard to go against him.
Have a quick think for your top 5 as well, Jett. I've got a couple from the chat here as well. Oblivion's Edge reckons Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Russell, Stroll top 5. He reckons Ferrari's gonna choke again, which. That's not a bad shout, to be honest. Not at all, in my humble opinion. Ryan says Max, Checo, Alonso, Charles, Stroll. I think that's also quite feasible. Jett, what do you reckon? What's your top 5 going into qualifying tomorrow?
I got Max pole, but I have Alonso second.
Okay.
Perez third. I have Charles 4th, and I have Stroll 5th.
Okay. I think Red Bull will lock out the front row again, so I'm going to go Max, Checo. I think Charles might end up 3rd. I think Ferrari's always been better over a lap, so I'm going to go Charles 3rd. I think Alonso 4. Maybe George Russell sneaks into 5th. Maybe. Sainz 5th.
It's not a bad shout for Russell, but okay.
I'm going to go Sainz. I think Sainz is the safe play on this one. I'm going to go Sainz for 5th on that one. So that's my top 5. And yeah, we will see tomorrow how that plays out in qualifying. I believe it's 5 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. on the East Coast for you American friends out there. One more time, Jett, tell the good people of WTF1 where they can find you.
Apabsolutely. Thank you again so much for having me. Again, if you want to check me out on all my socials, YouTube, JettMDK, Twitter, Instagram, really would appreciate it if y'all would check me out. And yeah, this was fun. This was a lot of fun.
Pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you for coming on and giving up your time for us. It was a fun time, indeed. And thank you everyone in the chat for tuning in as well. Much appreciated. I'll be back tomorrow, I believe, with Hannah, and a very special interview as well with one Rima Jaswali as well. So that's going to be fantastic as well. We'll have a great interview to get some local insights from Saudi Arabia as well. So thank you everybody for watching along on YouTube. Fingers crossed it isn't complete Red Bull dominance tomorrow, but I can't promise that's going to happen. But
you can only hope for Alonso. Alonso's our only hope, I think.
It's a weird time when Fernando Alonso is our only hope, like he's Luke Skywalker. This is quite the vibe, but here we are. I've been Dre, he's been Jett Krause. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see